One of the most common mistakes that we see is that clients use trademarks that are merely descriptive. So what does merely descriptive mean? A merely descriptive trademark describes the product, a feature, a purpose or character of the product or service. And they're generally denied protection, or at least denied protection on the principal register, because they're incapable of distinguishing your brand from your competitors. Generally, descriptive words will be used across an industry because they describe what you're doing. Many times they will be part of a trademark, and what you'll have to do is disclaim them as part of the mark. So if you have like Microsoft computers, the word computer would need to be disclaimed, just like Apple computers or Lenovo computers, so that the competitors can use the word computer to describe what they're doing. If you just had fast food for a burger joint or cozy rooms for a hotel, those are also descriptive words. So the legal basis comes from Section 2E1 of the Trademark Act. It forbids merely descriptive trademarks. And if we look at here's this section in the TMEP, which is the Trademark Manual of Examining Procedure, where it really goes into detail, lists out some case law about this, that in this video I'm trying to break down into a little bit of an easier to understand meaning, so you know what it is. Certain things like Nopalis for a cactus-based supplements, the courts found that was descriptive because it describes one of the ingredients. Here's some other rejected trademarks, Apple for potpourri because it described the smell of it. Bed and breakfast registry for booking services. Male pap test for a medical test for men. So context matters, meaning the context of the trademark, the word that you're using, in comparison to your product or service is what determines whether or not it's descriptive. And a descriptive term for one product might be usable for another product. Like the example here, the word clean, using that for technology might be okay, depending on what the technology is actually doing, versus for a cleaning product, it's not going to be okay. It's about how would the average consumer in the marketplace perceive your trademark. Is it describing what the product does, or is it descriptive as a name, as a brand? So you want to avoid the descriptive trap by creating and evoking the experience, but not just the description of it. So there is something called suggestive trademarks, which can go on the principal register. One of the big examples of suggestive is the word Greyhound for buses, because it evokes that it's going to be fast. Now, I think that's, everyone always uses that as the example, but there's a lot of words that maybe are even closer to being descriptive that are not descriptive and just evoke the speed. Research what others are using in your industry. If you see other people using that in their industry, that's a good sign that it's descriptive. That's actually one of the common things we see is when someone comes to us with a descriptive trademark, and right away we'll be like, this seems like it's descriptive, and then we do a search, we're going to see that there's a lot of others that are using that, whether they registered the trademark or not, but others might be using that, which means, again, it's going to be, even if you get on the supplemental, it's going to be a much weaker trademark, which means it's going to be really hard to enforce. You can always look at dictionary definitions. What does this word mean? To see if one of the meanings of the word is your product or your service or a characteristic or a feature of your service. Even if you are the first to use a term, that doesn't mean that you get to do that you get trademark rights on it. It still could be descriptive. We see this a lot where companies come out with a new name for a product, but it's very descriptive because it tells you exactly what the product does, even though there's no one else using that. And the term doesn't have to describe all aspects of the product, but just one of the features, one of the purposes, one of the components or ingredients of that. As you saw, the nopales for supplements. It could be that maybe they had a little bit of cactus and a bunch of other things in the supplements, but because they had one of the ingredients was cactus, which is also called nopales, they rejected it. And even if one of the services, if you use like a service type of a name, and you provide other services or provide to other people, it still could be, we see like, if you're like executive something and you're doing some sort of coaching or consulting, and part of that is working with executives at companies, that describes at least a subset, even though maybe you're doing not just working with executives, but you're working with many other people. So that's just, a little bit about descriptiveness. Try to avoid it as much as possible because it's just always going to be a weaker trademark. It's going to be harder to register, harder to defend, harder to keep others from encroaching on your space. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks and have a great day.